Good afternoon, Dr. Barker. So my name is Leah Simon. I'm your student for your Psych and Law class, and I'm reviewing People versus Turner for Santa Clara. So this case is about Brock Turner and a student named Chanel Miller. So Brock Turner was a student athlete. He was a student athlete at Stanford University, and he was found behind the dumpster thrusting Chanel Miller. Her clothing was disheveled, and she didn't really remember anything, but she was very traumatized. Both were under the influence, and Miller doesn't really recall what happened during the incident. This case has many problems because Turner was sexually assaulted. Turner sexually assaulted Miller and received a 6-month sentence. And he received only 3 months, quote unquote, due to good behavior, when he was supposed to receive longer than that. The judge, Judge Persky, took the case personally, and his judgment was biased racially and in gender. He was also a student at Stanford University, and he was on the baseball team instead of the swimming team. And I believe he saw himself in Turner, which is why he decided that he just only deserved 3 months. Something else that is a little different is the fact that Turner's father sent an email, like a 3-page letter to him, telling him his son is very young, he doesn't deserve to be in jail, he has so much forward to look to his life. And I believe it's very biased because the media portrayed Turner as well as someone else. They didn't represent him as a criminal. He was represented more as the young white kid who never did any wrong, and he was more presented as a victim than the actual victim. Due to Turner already serving the 3-month sentence in prison, he would not be able to serve another set amount of time due to double jeopardy. Double jeopardy is a law that states that you cannot be tried for the same crime twice. So he can't serve another 4 or 5 years, but they did try to do a recall. And as I said already, the media also does paint Turner as a good guy or Mr. Innocent. He's not really seen as the criminal. So the journal Article 1 suspects Turner was sentenced to 6 months in prison but only received 3 months, 3 of those months. In the state of California, this is not the average amount of time for a sentence, and he should have received a longer sentence than the 3 months that he actually served. And the probation, another consequence that he received was being put on a sexual offenders list for the rest of his life. And he was also expelled from school. He also received letters for not being able to be considered anymore for the Olympics because he was a really good swimmer, and he will not be able to compete in the Olympics anymore. In the article "You Took Away My Worth," Miller goes into a very traumatic state after the case had happened, and she basically wrote the letter "You Took Away my worth," and she explains how she felt in the traumatic experience that she's been having and experiencing after the rape. And she basically goes into her time at work. She can't work anymore, and how her life has changed completely 360. It's harder for her to go outside. She's like, I don't know if this is gonna happen to me again. And she also goes into saying that her life only changed for a couple of minutes Um, as well as Turner's father says, my son's life shouldn't be penalized for 3 seconds of good fun. Quote, and I quote, that's what the father wrote in the letter. Due to Turner already serving the 3 months and the law of double jeopardy, he cannot serve that time again. So there was a recall in efforts, which was unsuccessful. There was 1 million signatures to support it, but it was also unsupported. It just didn't go through. Judge Persky was also put on trial to be taken off to lose his judging license, because a lot of controversy was given to this case, and they did not see it fit for him to be a judge anymore. Turner being represented in the media as an angel, this is a form of repression and has been consistent throughout history. There's always the man that does something and then he's seen as, the angel instead of the actual criminal. And I concluded this to be towards patriarchy, for society to show us that, men still do have power. Turner was also never mentioned to be a rapist that preyed on women. He was always the star swimmer that had the future of winning multiple awards and moving forward with his career to the Olympics. So in the article, Stanford sexual assault victim, you took away my worth. I explained that already. It's very important to the case because she explains what happened. She also wrote a 4-page letter, which is, you took away my worth. In the 4-page letter, she's basically, in the article, she is getting interviewed about specific things that she said within the article, which is 4 pages. She wrote that to the judge, and she also posted it online. That's how a lot of the controversy started with the article. And she wrote a book. She recently wrote a book called Know My Name. The amount of time that Turner spent in prison was considered good behavior, and he only received 3 months or 6 months with probation, and then 3 months for good behavior. This also shows another case that has to do with this. A couple of years ago, in 1992, was Mike Tyson. He was accused of rape. He's also an athlete. He's a boxer. In Washington, his accuser, his sex life was also put on the stand. Okay. The article basically goes in depth about the letter that was also written by Miller to give a deserving sentence to Turner as well, as the distraught pain and agony in her life becomes. Turner was sentenced to 6 months in prison, but only served 3 of those months. There was racial and economic bias when Turner was sentenced. I also believe that the economic came into play. It doesn't say that the judge was paid, that Persky was paid, that Aaron was paid for releasing Turner at an earlier sentence, but I feel like that also had to come into play, because they have more money. He can't deal with the pain of being in jail for a long time, so he wrote the letter. And there might have been some type of exchange. Due to Turner's social class and him being an athlete in college, he was given a smaller than average sentence. The justice system is corrupt because the judge, Aaron Persky, took the case personal, and his judgment was biased racially and in gender, and as well as economically. This led to a campaign to remove him as a judge. Judge Persky can be considered a misogynist, and due to his biases, should not be a judge if this is how he makes decisions. this also goes to show that, men do have power, as I said before, and that, he has many biases. So this should have been seen before, even this case. Like, I wonder how many other people he's put in jail because he had his own biases and saw himself or didn't see himself in the person that he was putting on trial. The judge reinforced the rape sensitive attitudes and beliefs and reinforced it when he only gave him 3 months sentence. The judge shouldn't have seen himself in Turner, but he did, and unfortunately he only received a small amount of time. So there are many components of male socialization which predispose men to dominate and abuse to women. American culture supports male behavior that encourages men to distance themselves from feminine perceptions. This encourages power, status, control, and patriarchy. Berkowitz in 1992 added that sex role socialization provides men with permission to commit sexual abuse and create a cognitive framework that allows them to justify similar behaviors among male peers. Males feel justified to sexually exploit women. And then him being an athlete also provides athlete bias to the situation, meaning that because he's an athlete, he can do no wrong and he can hurt no one. When in all actuality, athletes are actually, most of them are dealing with high stress and using their physical bodies all day. So this is all that they know how to do, and they're also mostly in male-dominated situations all day, during practice, during the actual game, and they constantly have to prove themselves. In conclusion, Turner asserted his privilege in court and served a less than deserved prison sentence in jail. Turner has educational attainments and his father economic success, which proves Turner has the right to not spend a minimum of a year in jail, while his victim will be affected for the rest of her life. The victim also has been going to therapy and taking care of herself as far as the trauma that she received during this rap party. And Turner's goal was to change his narrative and create a story where he was the victim, but Miller took back her power by creating her own story and sharing it with the world. She didn't understand how someone could just rape her and make it okay and only spend 3 months in jail. But I believe that Miller took back her story by writing her own story and writing the 4-page paper and then posting it online so that people know who she is and she can get her side of the story out. Thank you, Professor Barker. This has been a great class. I appreciate you being my professor, and I hope you have a great semester next semester. Thank you.